I'm going to go over a couple of simple tips that mean you'll get the most out of your battery for every time you go away and for the entire life of your battery. The biggest killer of batteries is heat, and even an 8-degree rise in ambient temperature can halve the battery's life overall. Make sure you're using a charging system that actually has a temperature sensor. Whether it's on the battery for the ideal reading or close by for an ambient reading, it means that it's not going to overcharge your battery, overheat it, and damage it. The other problem with heat is that all your electrical gear has to work harder. And a big culprit is a fridge. Obviously, when it's hot outside or if your fridge is in direct sunlight, it's going to use more power. Couple that with the fact that your battery doesn't like heat and it's a perfect storm. So the cooler you can keep your fridge and your battery, the better. Start by ensuring your fridge has good ventilation, run it in the shade whenever you can, and add a protective fridge bag for extra insulation from warm ambient temperatures or the direct sun. AGM batteries prefer to stay fully charged rather than being discharged and then charged back up. And they actually prefer to be on constant trickle charge if the alternative is sitting there and draining away. Now with that in mind, make sure you've sized your battery correctly. If your battery's too small and you're constantly cycling it up and down like every day, then you're not only going to burn through your battery power faster on every trip, but you'll also shorten your battery's life dramatically. As you use your battery, the voltage drops disproportionately. So the further down your state of charge, the more volts will drop. And that means your battery needs to supply more current to run your devices to make up for that lower voltage. So as a simple example, if you're trying to power a 60-watt light globe off your battery and your battery is right down to 12 volts, the globe will need 5 amps of current. That's because 12 volts at 5 amps equals 60 watts. On the other hand, let's say you've attached a solar panel which is charging your battery at around 14.6 volts. The light globe would only need just over 4 amps. If you're camping for a couple of days or a week, that extra 25% of power consumption can make a huge difference. So by keeping the voltage up, you're using less amps out of your battery, which means it's going to last longer on every trip. And the second part is, the less you discharge it, the less internal damage you do and the more life you'll get out of the battery. While your battery might last 5 years if you look after it, if you're constantly cycling it up and down, it might only last 2 years or even 1 year with really heavy use. Leading on from tip number 2 is tip number 3, and that is use your power efficiently and don't waste your power. So a big way to help your battery is to make sure your fridge is running efficiently. And one way you can do that is not open it or close it more than you need to, and don't put warm things in and expect it to cool down. If you absolutely do need to cool, say, a case of drinks, try and put it in before you go to bed. That way the outside air temperature is cooler, plus your fridge is going to be closed for a good solid 8 hours, which means it can do its thing and cool everything down. And leading on from that is to not use power if you don't need to. And this goes for everything from leaving your camp lights on when you don't need them, or even charging your phone off your battery box instead of when you're driving your vehicle straight out of the SIG socket. And the same with your fridge. Plug it into your car while driving and it'll use power from your alternator rather than your second battery. And if you're charging it while you're driving, that's going to ensure a better charge as well. Tip number 4 is to make sure you're actually charging your battery properly. A dual battery isolator is a great option, but they don't work with smart alternators, and if you're using an AGM battery, it'll never charge to 100%. Let's say it only charges it to 90%. What that means is you're effectively turning your 100 amp hour battery into a 90 amp hour battery. And because you shouldn't use your AGM below about 50% capacity, you've now only got 40 usable amp hours rather than 50, and that's a big difference. The solution is a DC-DC charger, which is basically like a battery charger you'd plug in at home, but instead of using a power point, it uses your vehicle's alternator as the power source. Now the important thing about a DC-DC charger is it's able to output a higher voltage than what it gets in, and usually you can select the battery type. So in the case of an AGM, it'll output around 14.6 volts to ensure that it's fully charging the battery up to 100% every time you're driving. And finally, charging your battery properly is to make sure your battery is topped up as often as it can be. So if you're at camp, make sure you're using solar. That way your battery's going to stay charged up and topped up as long as the sun is out, which is not only going to extend your actual camping run time, but the battery's life as well. Well, there you go, a couple of great tips that are going to help you extend your battery's life overall and extend the amount of power you have on each camping trip you go on. So keep your battery and your fridge out of the heat, use your power efficiently and don't waste it, and make sure you keep your battery as charged up as possible, as often as possible, and don't dip below 50%. Now, if you want to know more about this topic, make sure you check out our channel, and in particular, our 12-volt dual battery masterclass, which goes over all these topics really in depth. As always, if you liked the video, make sure you hit like, leave us a comment if you want to see more, and make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss anything else we're doing.